So we're back. Did everyone get cookies and ice cream and everything? You got kind of a sugar high going on? Good. Because I'm going to mention again this gentleman here. I actually have a picture of the prizes. Here are the prizes. This is what you can win at 5 o'clock today if you get pull your name out of a hat. So obviously you see that's iPod Touch, and iPad, Xbox Connect, Fire, Kindle, and iPad Nano watch. So there's my shameless plug. With that, I'd like to introduce our next session, Reinventing the Social Network. And this is with Sarah Lacey, editor-in-chief and founder of Pando Daily, and certainly a blog that I read every single day. I think it's phenomenal. And we also used her venue, I should say, the venue that she uses for her monthly events at Madrone Studios in the Mission. And that's where we did the Big Brand Hackathon over the weekend. So thanks for that, Sarah. And with that, Sarah, please come on out.
Well, I hope you all have your ice cream sugar high, because I have a feeling this will be a lively panel. We'll keep up with your sugar high. So I'll just introduce everyone real quick, and then we can get going. So first we have Hadley Harris, who's the Chief Business Development Officer of Thumb. That is a bullshit title if I've ever heard one.
True.
What does that mean?
It means I do a lot of business stuff.
Short. Business stuff.
Business.
Business stuff. Tell us in one sentence about Thumb.
Thumb is a social network for instant opinions. Allows you to get and give opinions in real time.
How is this different than like all the other Q&A services out there?
I don't feel like we're really Q&A. Q&A tends to be about knowledge, and this is more about opinions. And the important thing that's going on under the covers are people are connecting with new people around these shared opinions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And we have Amy Millard next. Am I saying that right? Millard? Millard. Millard. And you're the VP of Marketing for Hearsay Social. If people don't know, tell them a little bit about Hearsay Social.
Hearsay Social is a sales and marketing platform used by enterprises with large sales forces or a large number of stores to create social media presences for, an example is Farmers Insurance. They have several thousand insurance agents use Hearsay Social to engage their customers.
Cool. And then we have Ben Parr at the end, who's mostly famous for getting fired from Mashable. Is that right?
For many things, but that is one of them, yes.
What are you doing now? It's always confusing.
It's I have a column with CNET, and I have a stealth startup, and at the end of the summer, I'll be able to actually talk about what the hell I've been doing.
Have you raised money for it yet?
Can't disclose anything yet.
As a former journalist, you should be a little bit more loose-lipped. People like you that make our jobs hard.
It's the opposite when you're a former journalist. You know how to keep it in your head and nowhere else.
All right, so everyone stay tuned, end of the story, for the mysterious Ben Parr startup, which is not a tech blog, right?
It is not a tech blog. I am not competing with you.
Good, because that would be a death wish, let me tell you. All right, now the focus of this talk is about whether or not smaller, more socialized social networks make sense. We obviously saw a wave of these kind of things being started in the sort of mid-2000s or so. Everyone wanted to be the Facebook for, cats and dogs, or the Facebook for hairdressers. And did any of them become big businesses, Amy?
No. But that doesn't mean that there's not room for more companies to do it. I think that it has to do with not just having particular interests, but new engagement models. And I think Pinterest is a good example of that. One of the things that Google has struggled is that they've pretty much attempted to start with the same model of engagement as Facebook. And so the question became, why move from Facebook to Google? But Pinterest is clearly a different method of engagement, and it's fun to interact with, and it's something that you can't do on Facebook.
But would you consider Pinterest to be a smaller, more socialized, more specialized social network? I mean, it's not really just for a certain group of people.
It's for a certain type of activity, though. And people who are attracted to, it's scrapbooking on the internet is the way I think of it. So if you talk about a social network around for cats, maybe not, but a social network for people who enjoy looking at pictures versus trying to design exactly what it is they're going to be interested in versus how they want to engage. And I'm sure there's going to be, with all the mobile applications happening, a social network that's fully around pure mobile engagement.
So Hadley, what are your views? Do you consider Thumb to be a smaller, more specialized social network, or does that make you uncomfortable?
No, I think we are a social network. It's interesting, when I was sitting out here before I came on, I asked on Thumb, what social networks do you use? And I got 70 responses, and almost no one named Thumb, although they all obviously are on Thumb. And I think most everyone named Facebook, and some people named Twitter. They're obviously using Thumb, but they don't see it as necessarily a social network. They see it as an app or a way of meeting people. I think the way that the end user views social network has changed, and they just see it as, a lot of these things they see as a game, they see as an app, they see as a utility, but they're actually all social networks, all very social.
I feel like it's a little bit of that transition that we saw in the early days of the internet, where companies were considered internet companies or software companies, but then pretty soon sort of everybody was an internet company in some shape or form. I mean, I think there's some stats that have been thrown around that there's more coders who work for Walmart than, guilds. So it's sort of like, I think it's a little similar with social as well. Ben, since you used to write for the blog that calls itself, I don't know, Everything Social or something like that, what's your view on this? Where do you think the first generation niche social networks went wrong?
So what we see right now, I guess, with like the social networks that are succeeding right now, they're focusing on. I would say they're not specializing in an area type like the social network for dogs, cats, frogs, whatever else other. But they're focusing on a unique way to interact with other people. Path is succeeding because it's the purely mobile interaction. It's the small group interaction. Pinterest because it is. I think it's the shopping aspect. It's the scrapbooking aspect. There's that different aspect. The first generation, they really focus on what if we make a social network for a very specific topic area. And you can make one for food, or you can make one for all these different other areas, but you then have a limit. It's just taking Facebook and putting it into a smaller market. What the new social networks are doing instead is taking a different take on it, a different way to approach how do you network with people socially.
Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable with us continuing to put Pinterest in the category of a smaller, more specialized social network. I mean, I see Pinterest as much more like it's akin to Twitter. It's just a totally different slice on social. What makes it smaller or more?
It's not. No, you're right. It's not smaller. It's just it's a different. It's a specialty. The only one, even Twitter is a specialty compared to Facebook. Facebook is like the social graph. Everything else is a specialty or a take. Like Twitter's specialty is real-time information, real-time news. Pinterest is scrapbooking. Facebook has all these kind of functionalities in one way or another, or all of these companies are built on top of their functionality. Airtime, all of them are.
So Instagram would be in that category as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I'm understanding you guys correctly, the social network that only caters to a certain number of people or a certain affinity group, dead, horrible business.
I feel bad. I'm going to pick on my friend Dimitri. I'm trying to remember the name of his social network, but it collapsed. He was trying to build a third-place social network, like another social network. But the problem is you just can't do that to succeed. You go look at Google Plus, and you have your answer there too.
Well, but Google Plus didn't try to go towards a certain group of people. I mean, to me, the one exception we could point to here is Grindr. I mean, it seems to be one of the only social networks for a certain affinity group. Now, we just wrote today, I think there's some argument their user numbers may be stagnating, so remains to be seen. So what was different about Grindr, Amy, than some of these other efforts?
I think that Grindr is not a social network in the sense that people of similar interests get online and spend a lot of time online with each other. Grindr is a very specific application. For those who are not familiar with it, I won't necessarily describe it, but folks can meet.
Yeah.
And there's enough people who want to use it, but there is a limit to if your question is there another company the size of Facebook out there in social media? I think the answer is probably not. If the question is, can another company make money? Then the answer is yes. And those are not necessarily the same thing. I mean, not everybody, 100 billion is a nice size, but 10 billion is also
right.
Pretty good.
So do all of these companies eventually get acquired by the big players?
I don't think so. I mean, I think what you've seen is that Facebook can't be everything to everyone, and there's opportunities for other companies to be independent and actually beat Facebook at a certain slice of the game. You know, whether it's Foursquare or Instagram. Instagram obviously got acquired, but Foursquare, you know, Facebook tried to really take them out by copying them, doing exactly what they did. At that point, a lot of people thought, you know, they're fucked. But in actuality, you know, Facebook wasn't able to do the check-in location you know, game as well as someone who's actually focused on it.
Although Foursquare has now moved away from check-ins.
But they're still around this location, you know, slice of all of social. And really, people think, okay, Foursquare, Facebook's everything, couldn't be everything to everyone. The thing that we're competing for now, at least what we see, is competing for the hours of the user, and that's like the pie. You know, we try and present ourselves. We're not competing with Facebook. A lot of our users are built on Facebook. They log on with Facebook. We're really only competing with Facebook for the hours of the day.
So, and you were saying backstage that like that's the stat you guys watch, and that's the one where you feel like you're really onto something.
Yeah, I mean, our average user is on Thumb 4 hours per month, which is from all known data higher than everyone except for Facebook.
And what have you done right that people are on there so much?
It's all about meeting new people. Facebook is a way to keep in touch with people you already know. You know, Twitter is a way to follow people that you want to know. Thumb is a way to meet people who are at their core very similar to you, have the same opinions, the same interests in a lot of ways as you are, and being able to meet them through asking questions, giving opinions, and then responding to opinions.
So, Ben and Amy, what do you guys think about sort of this, I guess, valley of death that startups might go through? I mean, someone like Thumb comes out, they're doing really well, but, you know, what happens between starting to take off and, you know, if you do really well, do you wind up like Instagram? Do you wind up essentially either, you know, Twitter or Facebook or whoever these big incumbents are give you so much money that you have to take it, or you just never quite get to the network effect that ads make sense, that you know your business model makes sense, which is kind of the area that Foursquare's in right now?
Well, I mean, I point to LinkedIn as a company that did very well, like with a specialized set, and did a very good job of finding a way to monetize, and did a very good job of getting to the IPO stage and becoming one of the big players. Nowhere near as big as Facebook, of course, but with their own social graph, they've been able to do extraordinary things and find extraordinary ways to monetize. Yeah, most of the ones that get to that point usually get acquired. Yammer's probably like getting acquired, whatever the hell is going on with that this time. But, you know, a few of those, like I suspect Pinterest will IPO rather than ever get acquired. A few of those always do break out. Instagram, I mean, it just a small little difference, maybe a small little difference in price, and maybe they'd be going for IPO instead of being acquired. Just imagine like the difference if Facebook, these kind of things, just like little events can change whether a company goes IPO or a company gets acquired.
Well, a lot of the questions are around how can a new social network that's oriented towards consumers break out, but there's a tremendous amount of money to be made in the ecosystems of these companies. The advertising budgets of the top Fortune 100 alone are tremendous, and they're shifting a lot of it to digitally. So there's a lot of money to be made in serving advertisers in some way or another, or brands in some way or another. It's certainly where we play. But in terms of, in my perspective, there's only so many giant consumer-facing companies in social media. There's only so many hours in a day that you can compete with. And once you have an app that's good enough, everybody else has to be so different and so much better.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like even though Twitter does something different from Pinterest, which does something different from Facebook, at the end of the day, these things are all sort of like scratching a lot of the same itches. I mean, they're all plays towards, self-expression or communication or connection. So I guess, Hadley, in addition to what you're doing with Thumb, you're also an investor. So when you're looking at social things coming in the door, what makes you think, is it a high bar to fund something else? Because, do you subscribe to the belief that people are just, all these itches are already being scratched and they don't need another way to express themselves?
I don't. I think there's going to be a large number of winners. They may not all IPO. They may not all, be $100 billion companies, but I think there's a lot of billion-dollar companies. How niche they are, and kind of, there's a lot of planes to this. There's certainly self-expression, but there's also the idea of is it a real versus a virtual persona? And there's a lot of continuums in between, and there's a lot of companies that haven't filled those continuums. If you look in a country like Japan, there's companies that have made a lot of money through in-app purchase and virtual persona that is not filled at all right now here.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's a cultural difference, or do you think it ever will be filled here?
I think it will be filled here.
What do you think, Amy? Virtual worlds, totally lame, or will one day be a big business?
Well, personally, I think that a lot of companies have attempted to duplicate what's popular in Japan and take it here, and that there are cultural differences. But if you want to take the different models of engagement and the amount of hours, perhaps the real model is not how many hours are spent on Facebook, but how many hours are spent watching television, and that those are the minutes that are going to be subtracted over time. It's certainly the fear of the media companies, is that social networking and the more interesting that your iPad becomes, the less interesting your TV is, and those are the minutes that social networking is starting to take away from. So instead of sometimes viewing it as oh, Facebook gets X hours a month online, a lot of companies are looking at the amount of time spent on the television as the opportunity for growth.
Okay, great. We have some time for questions. If anyone would like to come to the microphone.
You want to.
Anyone? Well, we're waiting on those brave souls to come forward. Ben, do you want to have sort of a final pre-question word here? What are the types of companies where if you read about them, you would be like, there's no way that is taking off? And what do you think are the categories within this that are still really undone, that are begging for, say, a Grindr or a next generation Instagram?
The ones first the ones that I think are going to do well. The ones that have the monetization model right out of the gate. There's very rare exceptions right now. Things like SocialCam that don't have the monetization model up front and are going to do very well. But I think more and more you're going to see it's much more interesting for investment people to say oh yeah, after every single transaction you make money, like a TaskRabbit or an Uber or all of those, you're going to make a whole bunch of money off of that. I think that people are there's going to just be this tremendous wave of mobile applications that do social and all these different kind of verticals, maybe even going back to the social networks for food and dogs and such. And most of them are just not going to be able to get the numbers, the traction they need in order to survive. Once you have that pop, it's you get that pop, and unless you can really sustain it and you can keep that growth going, it becomes very, very difficult.
Now, even for pretty big-sized mobile companies like Foursquare and Instagram, the overall numbers are a lot lower than we're used to for internet numbers, because you're downloading this thing, you're interacting with it. So, since you're the mobile company sitting here, how big do you need to get to build a business? Having 1 million, 2 million people is not enough to do a big ad play.
Agreed. I think what you're going to see in the next 2 to 3 years is that number is going to come down substantially as different models start to come out, as location-based ads finally come, and that's we've all been waiting for that for a while, is in-app purchases and transactions actually come. I think you're going to find that number is going to come down, and maybe now it is 100 million to be a real big business, but that number could be 10 million pretty soon, and then maybe even lower.
Okay, great. No questions. Really, guys?
Come on, brave people. Yes, come on up. Come on up. Yes.
So we can hear you? All right. So while she's coming to the mic, do you want to tell us what your company is?
Sometime at the end of the summer, I want to tell you.
It's fun to watch it get turned around.
I'm used to it.
I know. I've learned as an entrepreneur that the press is just awful. All right. Go ahead.
My name is Tiffany, #PR Tiffany.
Hi, Tiffany.
Hi, Ben. How you doing?
Doing well.
See you at the next SF New Tech, maybe? Maybe. All right.
Maybe.
That's another thing we'll talk about later. But anywho, this question is for actually Hadley. I liked what you said earlier about some companies might IPO, some might not, but there's potential to raise millions of dollars with a niche market. So can you elaborate on that? And I totally agree. I think that a lot of social media applications are trying to diversify. They're trying to do everything. But maybe where the money's at is by centralizing on one certain kind of niche market. So I'd like you to elaborate on what you mean by that.
Sure. So, I mean, the opportunity for entrepreneurs to be successful, you don't have to IPO, obviously. You can be acquired. You can stay private for long periods of time. There's secondary liquidity, and it's not kind of an all or nothing. There's a lot more opportunity now for late-stage investors to come on, give partial or full liquidity to the investors. So I feel like now it's much more of a kind of a spectrum, and earlier in the process you can have entrepreneurs, even as early as Series B, taking out money and building a business, not feeling like they have to rush to an IPO or rush to get acquired. Does that answer your question, or?
Are you asking specific niches?
No, what were you saying, Ben?
Well, I was going to add on to the IPO point, which is like now with the new SEC rules, that you have more time before you actually have to IPO. You have to remember the reason you IPO is to raise money. That's the entire point of it. There's more and more liquidity in the private markets, and from Goldman Sachs and like that. And if you can get that money in without having to deal with public company issues, I mean, I would go for that. I don't want to run a public company. It's a pain in the ass.
But, I mean, just to be devil's advocate here, a lot of those people, they want money in a handful of companies. I mean, frequently it's like the below-the-fold companies that have something interesting but aren't building huge companies that want that liquidity, and frequently the people who want to purchase that liquidity don't want it from those companies. I mean, do you think there's a supply-demand imbalance there?
I think this is just the beginning, and you're going to see it continue to move in that direction, where you're going to see more and more companies getting more money for the entrepreneurs earlier, able to stay private longer. Right now, we're just at the infancy. There's things like second market that are barely off the ground. As those things mature, there'll be more opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. You want to? Did we answer? Or do you want to add on? Okay. I'm going to assume we answered. I've still no idea. Okay.
Steve Ekman from Here Planet, and I'm wondering, in terms of, we see a lot of companies in the social networking space start niche and go wide, and can you talk a little bit about strategy, and what are you personally and business-wise have had the experience where it's easier to, or better to start a little bit wider and then go more niche, or is it better to start more niche and go more wide?
Amy, do you want to start out with that one?
Could you give me an example of what you mean by niche and then go wide?
Yeah, who's done that successfully?
Like you might start as a photo sharing app, let's say, and then broaden out from there. That's why I want to ask the experts about that in terms of, if you choose a really focused market, you might get better penetration. I can see strategies on both sides of the coin. You might start wider and then find you really need to focus, or you might start focused and find it's a better, you grow from there and then you can broaden out.
Right. So which is the better strategy?
Honestly, it depends on what your long-term differentiation is. Why should people spend time with your application at all, whether it's about dogs or about everybody who enjoys pets, to go wide? You can't go wide unless you have a reason that they should spend time with you. And so a lot of people start niche because they understand it and they have a business strategy for it, and therefore go wide once they've penetrated. There's only so much of a market you can penetrate. And then there's this voracious need on the part of funders to continue to grow, and this pressure to grow. And so therefore go wide. But that doesn't necessarily always make sense for the business.
One example right now that just launched is this really, I think, really cool app called Tastemaker X that's like very much centered around music, and it's basically a way for like record nerds to be able to say and prove that they spotted something first and get credit for it and get a following based on it. And I think that, while the music nerd part doesn't necessarily appeal to me, because I'm well aware that I'm uncool when it comes to music, I am really into like spotting like new fashion trends, or spotting like the hot new restaurant in San Francisco before anyone else. So it's like their hope is to take one vertical that people are really passionate about and then roll that out into lots of different interest areas. But I don't know. I mean, has anyone done that well?
That's right where they're going. I know Dave McClure's somewhere back there, and he will scream at you and tell you, like, if you are a startup, you have 3, 4 people. You don't have a lot of time to deal with, like trying to figure out, like, wide markets. Focus on one specific user group. I don't care if it's just mothers age 35 to 39. You don't have a lot of time. Focus and nail one group, and now you have the data to go nail other groups. That's the way you succeed. Think about if Facebook had gone after everybody in the beginning. There wouldn't be a Facebook. They went after college students on one university
but
to start.
Dustin Moskowitz disagrees with that. He said if they had been started in a time of
and I disagree with him.
Well, I mean, he did found the company and is a billionaire, and you know.
Yeah, before you go for a wider audience, you have a better chance of succeeding.
All right, so Amy says it depends. Ben says you just start focused and go wide. I say it's really hard to build a company, and if you try to go by any special playbook, you're going to fail. So, would you like to jump
Does that answer your question?
They're all good answers. I agree.
I guess I would say that the biggest mistake I often see is people trying to expand too quickly, and that there are plenty of companies that have tried to do that and failed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think you have to succeed in one market and then see where that goes. But I like the music example where, do you go for one genre or go for all genres, and then maybe you really hone in and focus on one.
But it's basically the same use case. It's just across different things. So he'll be interesting to watch. All right, I've been getting the end sign flashed to me for like 20 minutes. So we're going to wrap up. But everyone, huge round of applause for our panel. Can you get up? I don't know.